thank you so much for joining us this morning for our special guest speaker and our future Hall of Famers presentation. My name's Christina, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. So I thank you all for attending. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. I do have the chat function turned off, so you won't be able to use that, but I do encourage you to raise your hand. So if I ask a question, you can raise your hand and I can see whose hand is raised. You can also use, if you highlight your screen, you'll see the Q&A box there. So that's where you can type in your questions. Then after myself and Andrew are finished speaking, we will get to as many questions as we can, just time dependent, but hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. And then if you can right now see me and hear me and all is good, I'll get started and I'll just let people kind of join in as they do. So again, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to have you. It's nice that we're able to still do some of these interactions, even though we're in these trying times. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us today. So first and foremost, I'm curious to know if anybody has ever heard of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame or been to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. So maybe in that little chat box there, you can raise your hand if you've ever been to the Sport Hall of Fame or you've ever heard of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. Awesome, we've got a couple of people, so that's really good. So basically what we do at the Sport Hall of Fame is we celebrate, or we honor, we recognize people from our province of Nova Scotia. And the reason they're in the Sport Hall of Fame is because they are the best of the best at what they do. So we've got obviously people from all over the province, from Cape Breton all the way down to Yarmouth, and they really truly are our sport heroes from right here in Nova Scotia. But what I want to do today is just introduce you to a little bit about the Sport Hall of Fame, and I'm hoping that after you hear the presentation between myself and Andrew, you'll be a little bit more inspired or motivated to maybe set a goal or go after a dream or something that you have in your head. So first and foremost, for those that haven't been, the Sport Hall of Fame is located in the Scotiabank Centre in downtown Halifax. So we're right in where the Mooseheads play, the Hurricanes play, the Thunderbirds, all of those sporting events and concerts and whatever else are in the Scotiabank Centre. It's a perfect place for us to be located. And we're open Monday to Friday, 10 to 5. And in the summer, we're also open 12 to 4 and on the weekends. And we're open for all of those Scotiabank Centre events. So when everything opens back up and you are able to go and see a sporting event, or you are able to come to visit us, I hope that you will. We have some really awesome stuff at the Sport Hall of Fame for those that haven't been, and just a few of the things I wanted to highlight here. We have our sports simulator, really super fun. You can play soccer, baseball, basketball, what else can you play? Hockey, of course. Really fun in our sports simulator there. You'll see that top picture there is what we like to call our Scotiabank Legends Theatre. And we do presentations there. We show videos of our sport heroes, of really cool things that have happened in the sporting world. And it's a great place to just sit down and relax and soak in some of the really cool things that we have. And then on the left there is our Sidney Crosby exhibit. So kind of one of our more famous exhibits that we have at the Sport Hall of Fame. Jerseys, pucks, helmets, lots of cool pictures of Sidney, and of course the Sidney Crosby dryer there as well. So that's really cool. And of course, because we are a museum, we've got all kinds of old sport artifacts. We have pictures and stories about these incredible heroes from our province. Really great place to work, an awesome place to visit. You feel really inspired when you kind of walk around the halls and see all these great athletes and the accomplishments that they've done. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to open back up as soon as we can so that you guys can see all of those great things that we do have on display. So today I do want to talk a little bit about some of our Nova Scotia sport heroes, because we are very fortunate to have one of them with us on this call today. And I wanted to just kind of introduce you to some of the people that we do have in our Sport Hall of Fame. First and foremost, one of our most famous, let's say Nova Scotia athlete, Nova Scotia sport heroes is Sidney Crosby, of course from Cole Harbour. Three-time Stanley Cup champion, Olympic gold medalist. He's won multiple awards in the NHL, and just one of the more well-known athletes simply because of the accomplishments that he's had. But a neat part about, Sidney is that he didn't really start out to be such a great hockey player. And I mentioned that Sidney Crosby dryer in our Sport Hall of Fame. And when you go in, you'll see the dryer and it's kind of all beaten up. There's scratches on it and there's all kinds of black marks all over it. And when Sidney was little, he used to go downstairs and practice shooting pucks at his hockey net, which was in his basement. And a little bit to the left of the hockey net, a little bit behind the hockey net was his parents' dryer. And as he was practicing, he would miss the hockey net over and over again. And as a result of that, the pucks would hit the dryer. So he never made 100% of the shots he took. He was never a perfect player, but through lots of practice and through lots of hard work and that kind of never give up attitude, Sidney was able to, to continue to get better and to set those goals for himself and do really well at the sport of hockey. And of course, as we do know, he was drafted to play in the Q and then off to the NHL and now one of the best hockey players in the world. So even though you start off something and you're not going to be that good at it, it's sort of that mindset that you have, that hard work mentality that will get you to be where you want to be. So setting those goals, having something in mind, really important. So Sidney Crosby, one of the more famous athletes that we have. And I wanted to kind of change directions and go in a different part of the province to one of our athletes named Johnny Miles. And Johnny Miles is from a really small town in Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia. And he started off at about a middle distance runner and he wasn't really expected to go a long distance. And the Boston Marathon is 26.5 miles long. And he went to that first Boston Marathon and none of the reporters were talking about him. Nobody interviewed him. Nobody wanted to ask him about his training methods or anything like that. They were talking about a couple of other runners and, Johnny wasn't really known. Little did they know that Johnny was going to win that Boston Marathon that year. And not only did he win that Boston Marathon, but he's the only Nova Scotian to win the Boston Marathon twice, which is really an incredible feat. If you think about how many people compete in that every year, how long it takes to run that marathon. So it's really incredible. He's now known as one of Canada's best ever long distance runners and from a really small town in Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia. Because of his accomplishments, they recognize Johnny every year at the Johnny Miles Marathon that's hosted in New Glasgow. So it just kind of goes to show that not everybody will believe in you, but if you believe in yourself, anything is possible. Another good example of a sport hero that we have from right here in Nova Scotia is Johnny Miles. The next athlete I'm going to briefly mention is a female athlete, and her name is Karen Fennell. And she's from a small town just outside of Halifax here in Waverley. Lots of lakes around the area, so it was pretty easy for Karen to get on the water when she was younger and do her training there at a canoe club called Chima. Karen was always really small and she was never going to be, she was never going to be able to, excel at basketball or excel at volleyball, but she really loved being on the water. And despite her small stature, she worked really hard and was very, very strong. So through that, Karen excelled a lot at kayak, 3-time Olympian, a 2-time world champion, 5-time Nova Scotia Female Athlete of the Year, from a really small town in Waverley, Nova Scotia. And Karen does a lot of work with us here at the Sport Hall of Fame. And some of you, if you've had the future Hall of Famers come to your school, might have had Karen come to your school as well. She's very active with us and really shares her story very well, just about how important it is to have a goal in mind and how you can achieve that goal through those little tiny goals along the way. Just out of curiosity, has anybody here, the raise of hands, ever had Karen attend their school? Or have maybe heard her speak at another place? We've got some people. Awesome. Yeah. So she's a really good speaker. We're really excited to have her work with us along with some of the other athletes that we have here. The next athlete I want to talk about is George Dixon. And has anybody here at a raise of hands heard of the George Dixon Center, the community center in downtown Halifax? Just off Gottingen Street. A couple people? Great. So that may be where you've heard the name before. George Dixon is from Africville, so not far from where that community center is. And he is kind of one of the most well-known boxers in Canada. And obviously he didn't box recently, it was way back in the day, but he was the first man to ever win more than 2 world titles. That was really incredible because, as you can see, he wasn't a very big guy. But he is credited and known for inventing a couple of really popular boxing techniques the heavy bag, and shadow boxing, which boxers all over the world still use to this day. So because of that and kind of the pathway that he's created for not only boxers but athletes right here in Nova Scotia and Canada, they have that George Dixon Center, and they like to honor just the accomplishments that he has brought to this province so far. And the next athlete I want to talk about is Steve Giles, again from a really small town in Lake Echo, and he's done some amazing stuff for the sport of canoe. So different to kayak, where you're kind of only on one side, whereas a kayak, you're on both sides. Steve used to get in the canoe and he was never really good. He'd get so nervous before a race. He's been known to fall out of the boat right before he raced. He's been known to vomit and get really sick before he used to race. He had to have a couple rescue boats come and rescue him. And this is when he was, training for a couple of years. But he really wanted to go and represent Nova Scotia at the nationals, at the world championships. And he was able to do that. So he calmed his nerves. He got some really good mental training, and he was able to compete at a very high level. As you see there, Olympic bronze medalist, 3-time Olympian, world champion, a Pan Am Games champion. So really, really awesome that he was able to do that. And Steve still works here in Nova Scotia and still lives here, so that's really cool as well. And I think this might be the last athlete before I introduce to you our guest speaker, but of course I wanted to highlight a little more of she's kind of in the news still to this day, and this is Ellie Black, who just lives right down the street from me actually in Halifax. The gymnast, one of Canada's best ever gymnasts. Trains at the Halifax Alta Gymnastics Club, which is just kind of by the Halifax Shopping Center. She competes in all 4 events, so vault, balance beam, uneven bars, and the rings. And she's a 5-time medalist at the Pan American Games, for both Pan American Games that she's attended. She is a 2-time Olympian. Hopefully will go to her 3rd, which would have been this summer, but unfortunately won't be. She's a world silver medalist, and that's something that no other Canadian gymnast has ever done. And the really neat part about Ellie is she's trained right here in Halifax. Yes, she does travel all over the world to train, but her family is here, her coach is here, and she really wanted to be right here in Halifax to train, and that was to have that support system around her. When she was training, she knew it was going to be really hard work. So she had to sacrifice a lot, as did all the other athletes. She couldn't go to sleepovers because she'd have to train. She couldn't eat junk food because she'd have to keep her body in, tip-top shape. She had to skip birthday parties because she'd have to go to the gym. And of course, at the time, all of those things are hard to compromise with. But Ellie had a dream in mind, and it was to be an Olympian. And she knew that through that, it was going to take a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. And that sacrifice would all be worth it when she was able to represent her province and her country at the Olympic Games. So she was really excited to do that at her first Olympic Games in London, and that year Team Canada came 5th. So best ever finished by a Canadian gymnastics team, and from there, Ellie just keeps going up and up. And yeah, there are struggles along the road, but it's having that dream, that goal in mind, that's going to help you to really get after that. So there will be ups and downs, and it will be hard to fight through those. But if you have that thing in mind that you want to achieve, and you have that support system around you that's going to help you, that's the really important part. So I talked to you about a couple of the athletes that we have here that are either inducted in the Sport Hall of Fame, or we like to call them our future Hall of Famers. All of those athletes are from right here in our province of Nova Scotia, and they're really great examples of just some of the sport heroes that we have from here. And of course, we give these people a very special name. We call them our heroes. So somebody that you can look up to, somebody that inspires you, somebody that motivates you. They're really important to have in your life. And if you don't have one of those people, maybe one of these athletes can be that. And if you do, it can be anybody that's going to help you to achieve that goal that you have in your head. So a teacher, a coach, a parent, older brother or sister, somebody that's going to support you to help you achieve that goal. And we are very fortunate. I mentioned a couple of those athletes that are from our province, but we are very fortunate to have one of them with us on this call here today. and I'm really excited to introduce him to you because it's my first time working with him, and it's going to be his first time in a long time to be able to present to some of the youth that we have here in our province. So Andrew Haley is from Cape Breton and started swimming at a young age, and had to kind of go through a really hard time, and I'll let him get into that. And I introduced you guys a little bit on the blurb that I sent in the email. But he's, a Paralympian champion and a world champion, and we're really excited to have him on the call here today. So I'm just gonna let him join us this afternoon, or this morning, I guess, and I will turn it over to him as he gets you guys into some really exciting things that he's going to talk to you about today. Again, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end. So if you want to type them in that Q&A box, and once Andrew's done his presentation, we'll get to those. But Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today from your beautiful condo in downtown Toronto. It looks really nice and awesome there. We're really excited to have you on today. So I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks. So everybody can hear me okay? We're good? All right, right on. So it's great to be here with everybody. As Christina mentioned, I'm from Nova Scotia. Obviously, you can see my picture there taken at a competition I did in Phoenix, Arizona many years ago. She also mentioned about Ellie and her training routine, and hearing that essentially was like hearing my own story. I went to when I went to Dalhousie, I would I'd have a competition on one weekend, whether it was at Dalplex or whether it was in Fredericton, UNB, or at Acadia or somewhere else. And the opposite weekends, if I was back in Halifax, I'd be home studying, I'd be home working. If I was to go out with the guys, I wouldn't be staying up late because I had to get up early for a competition or a training at the Dartmouth Sportsplex or at Dalhousie. So it was a lot of sacrifice. But one of the things that I think you can take away from all this is what I thought about during my career, and is that if you believe in what you're doing, you don't sacrifice a day in your life. And I wanted to be, you'll see gold and bronze medals, Paralympics, and all this. A lot of the accomplishments that I've had is that I really tried to invest my time in what I was doing. I never really felt as if I was sacrificing time, because I wanted to be at the top of the podium. I wanted to travel. I wanted to be the best of the best. And fortunately for me, I was able to get there. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have a chat with all of you today was that I believe anybody can be amazing. I believe that we all have it in us. So I'm going to start off, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. When I was 6 years old, we hear a lot right now, if you're paying attention to the news, about Terry Fox, and it's how it's been 40 years, excuse me, with his Marathon of Hope, and new shoes have come out for him, and new, apparel for him. And I'm the same way. I lost my leg to osteogenic sarcoma, formerly known, right now you can see it there, as bone cancer. When I was 6, I was given as I mentioned, 35% chance to live, and I was able to beat that mostly due to the great service that I got first at the Northside Hospital in North Sydney, but then at the amazing facility, as all of you are, I'm sure, well aware of, the IWK. And still keep in touch with some of the doctors that I've had over the years. And it was a very experimental surgery with me. Part of the leg that you see there, or a little bit of a leg, I guess, they took my calf muscle and they flipped it up into my femur, and they put a plate and 6 screws. And that's where I went on. I got a prosthetic device at the rehab center, I think on Summer Street, and I went along with my life. And then when I went back to North Sydney, I thought to myself, I have a choice to make. The choice was to either give up and feel sorry for myself. I've got one leg, and really nobody in North Sydney that I knew had sort of a disability. So I was sort of really an outlier where I grew up, but I decided to take a hold of my life, and I decided to make the best of it. And a lot of people would say, like, well, you only had a 25-meter swimming pool in Sydney. Well, I made the best of that too. And eventually we moved to the Halifax area, and then I had Centennial, I had Dalplex, and the world was my oyster. And I think mostly because I just believed in myself. And Christina had mentioned a lot of athletes from the area, of course, Ellie, Sid, Steve, George, and there's just so many great athletes that you can use as role models to gain hope and gain some sort of inspiration to whatever you're doing. Obviously, right now we're going through a tough time. You're all home from school. You probably haven't seen some of your friends in a while, and I'm sure that's something that's for a lot of you are feeling, kind of feeling like getting back to normal, and I don't blame you. So we have to take trials and tribulations and things that happen to us sort of in stride a little bit and think there's going to be better days ahead, much like there was better days ahead for me when I stood on the podium and was able to win when I win. So it's a long road, but certainly if you believe in yourself, you can do anything. One of the things I wanted to share before we sort of get into some questions is a story from 1992. And that was in the Barcelona Paralympics. I was the first. It was my first Paralympic Games, and it was sort of the start of my Hall of Fame career, if you will. And I got on the in the blocks in the morning preliminaries, as we call them, heats. And my best time was 4 minutes and 58 seconds. I was 14 seconds away from the world record holder. Certainly, by no stretch of the imagination, was I ever even remotely considered a medal contender. I think most people would think if I made finals, that would be a good job. Well, in the morning heats, the world record holder went 4 minutes and 46 seconds, and I went 4 minutes and 46 seconds. And I qualified second going to finals with a huge Canadian record. In my lane 5, as they seed them, if you're aware of swimming, maybe put your hand up if you know anything about swimming, they seed based on your time in the morning. So because my time was second, I had lane 5. The world record holder who finished first in the morning had lane 4. But there was 3 athletes that were supposed to win the medal. It was Iceland, Norway, and Germany. And everybody was kind of talking that they were going to win the medals, and everybody else was fighting from 4th till 8th. We got onto the blocks. It was a beautiful morning or evening pool. The stars, it was a bright day. So they sounded the gun, and we entered the pool. And at the 200-meter mark was Iceland, Norway, and Germany. Just like everybody said, the 300-meter mark was Iceland, Norway, and Germany. Again, just like everybody said, it was kind of going right to plan. But at the 300-meter mark, I said something to myself because I'm in 4th place. And I said, go now. You can win, or you can get on the podium if you go now. And the other side, this little devil on this side says to me, no, don't go now. You will die. In swimming terminology, it doesn't mean you're actually going to die. It means that you're going to probably falter, and you're probably going to finish 8th because you're just going to run out of gas. And this is what's important about the whole story is that the side there, it's happened really quickly. And that side said, Andrew, allow yourself to be great. And that's all it took. And I basically put my extra focus hat on in the pool. Is happening super quick. And I touched the wall. Iceland was first, 4:41. Norway was second, 4:42. And I was third in a bronze medal at 4:43 in a new Canadian record. I'm not saying this about the medal, although it was amazing and it felt like, it's one of the best moments of my life. I'm saying this because each and every one of you have the power to be great in your life. Each and every one of you have the power to do amazing things. And just because you're from Nova Scotia and Halifax doesn't mean you can't compete with the rest of the world. You've seen it already in the presentation that there's so many different stories about people who have competed with the rest of the world and done extremely well. Why can't we see your face in many years at a Sport Hall of Fame induction ceremony? So I think that's good for me. I also wanted to mention one other thing before we get into it. I decided to go get my gold medal. This is the one from the Paralympic Games in 2000. We broke the world record. I swam butterfly. At one point in my career, I hold the world record of 50, 120-meter butterfly. So that's the medal that you can see, the Opera House, the bridge, and the different events going around. And it's really nice to be able to have this, not only for me, but to be able to share with you, all Nova Scotians. Obviously, things outside the virus, there's so many other bad things have happened to the province lately. My heart goes out to everybody who's been affected by the tragedies. But if you stay focused on what you're doing and schoolwork's very important. I have a 9-year-old at home. Sometimes it's not easy to get her to do the homework that she needs to do. So I feel for the parents out there. But it's a tough road, but we're going to be stronger because of it. And you're going to look back at these times, and you're going to be strong. So anyways, we can go through some questions. Hope that was all right. And we are good.
That was great. Yeah, thank you very much. We do have a couple of questions here. So Alexandra is wondering what the first goal was that you set for yourself to reach, whether you can remember or not. It's one that you remember, the first goal.
Sure, yeah. So the first goal for me actually was to get an A time in Nova Scotia. So swimming is divided amongst A and double A, and because of my disability, I would always go to competitions, and I was finishing last. And I'm sure some people on this call maybe have felt the feeling of finishing last at something. Uh, so one time I said to my coach, I want to be able to beat somebody. And so my best time, I don't exactly know the time, I think it was like 1 minute and 14 seconds, 100 freestyle, wasn't that quick. And I swam the race, and I came back, and I swam 1 minute and 12 seconds, but I finished last. And I said to my coach, Ian McCachran, I said, I didn't beat anybody. I was last. And he says, you weren't last. I go, did you not see the race that I just swam? There was like 30 people, and I was 30th. He said, what was your best time going into the race? I said, 1:14. He goes, what did you go? I said, 1:12. He said, you just set a personal world record. And I went, a personal world record? He said, you just went faster than you've ever gone in your life. Forget everybody else. You're getting better. So we have this idea about comparing ourselves to others instead of comparing ourselves to ourselves and our progress and getting better. So in this case, the idea was to get the A time, and eventually I got it. And I felt it was really a significant milestone in my career, because for somebody with a disability to get these prestigious A times was a big deal, and things just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it is important to kind of set those personal goals, right? Because you have to beat yourself before you can beat other people. So that's awesome. That's really good for you. Jess is wondering if you've ever played any other sports aside from swimming.
Yeah, so I actually got into swimming when I was 15, so kind of a little bit later in life. My aunt knew the national coach, and I started in the Kiwanis pool in Sydney. But before that, I tried golf for a year. Wasn't very good. I tried baseball. As you can imagine, with somebody with one leg, trying to run around the bases wasn't the greatest. But I won typical little leaguer because of my hustle, and it was an award given in North Sydney to the athlete everybody wanted to emulate and be like, and that was kind of a cool thing for me. I played basketball in elementary school. I like to play the odd game of tennis. So it hasn't really stopped me from playing certain sports. Obviously, I'm not that great at skater. Can't really water ski, things like that. There's things I can't do, or it's not really that easy to do. But when I picked up swimming in grade 8, it kind of just took over, as you mentioned about Ellie and the focus. It's just, that had to be it. That was my sole focus, because I think at a certain point when I started 15, I made my first World Championships a year later, and Paralympics 2 years after that, and Commonwealth Games, and then the list goes on and on. So it's just focusing on the immediate term, but always having a sense of the amazing that can come later on.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Have you ever wanted to give up? And if so, how did you stop yourself?
Yeah, so interesting story there too. When I was back in 1991, I had actually moved, as I mentioned, from North Sydney to Dartmouth, and I joined in with the Dartmouth Crusaders. There were some athletes on the team that I will not name, but while we were swimming, I often liked to lead lanes. Even though I had disability, I tried to work harder than everybody else, and I think they were kind of taking exception to the fact that I was trying to always be, the best athlete there is there. So that sometimes they started to kick me, and while we were doing kick sets, they would try to basically hurt me. And I got out of the pool a couple times, and I talked to my coach, Bill Greenlaw, and I said, listen, like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think that, I just want to stop. I'm not being treated very well. I don't think the kids at that age, they got like training with somebody with a disability. I don't really think they understood how that whole dynamic worked. And instead of treating me like a person, like an athlete, like they should have, they treated me sort of like somebody who's weird and different. And I clearly was not. So I wanted to give up there. He sort of talked me off the ledge, if you will. And he said, listen, like, you have a lot to give. You can be better than this. I think there's lots of times where you just want to give up, and things get too hard. But ultimately, if you can persevere through challenges, if you can persevere through the hard times, you're so much stronger at the end. And I will tell you, as you go through your life and challenges come up, those moments will help shape you as an individual when you're old to go to university and deal with what, there's a big difference between going from grade 12 to university. And there's a big difference going from university to working full time, having responsibilities and then families. And, that's much in the future, but it's these moments. Don't back down. Don't give up. And if you need help, talk to your parents, talk to friends, talk to people who are positive to help you be better. And so that would be my voice, to just never give up on yourself.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think having that team, whether you're in an individual sport or a team sport, having that team around you is important to help you pursue those goals and push you along the way, because it's so much harder to do things by yourself than it is to do things with people supporting you and around you. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Your best memory?
Besides beating cancer twice,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that it was this. I'm going to show you guys this. I'll tell you the story. So this is my gold medal from 1998 World Championships. And back in 1990, when I came back from World Championships in Aston, Holland, on the plane ride, I said to myself, Andrew, one day you're going to be world champion. Now, that is not something, a kid from Cape Breton usually says to themselves, because, there's a lot of people who are going to tell you that as to our previous comment, that you cannot do something. And I just believed in it, in everything I had. So all those times shoveling the snow off the car, going to the pool, not going to dances, not staying up late with friends, everything that took to get to the moment that potentially I could be world champion. So it happened many years later. I've got these dream goals. So when I went to World Championships in 1998, it was in Christchurch, New Zealand. I was ranked first in the world, and I was able to win the gold medal. And after I won, let's see if you can see the back of my medal. Is Andrew Haley, 100-meter fly, Canada, October 14th. And then I have the word finally right there.
Awesome.
And I put finally on the back of the medal because the first word out of my mouth after I won World Championships was I finally did it. Mm-hmm. After 8 years of trying to and our World Championships were every 4 years. So it took a lot of struggle, of determination, of motivation on my own part, of sacrifice for my parents. Not me, because I said I love what I was doing. So to be able to win that medal, to sort of validate the whole career that I was good enough, I was good enough to be the best. Obviously, there's been other amazing accomplishments that I'm very fortunate to have in my career. But that World Championships, even though the medal is not the biggest medal that I own, certainly is the most important for what it represents.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so great. I love that story about the word finally on the back of your medal. But obviously, it took a lot of failures before you got there. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on like how you came to those failures and how you overcame those failures?
Yeah, so another story, back in 1996 at the Paralympics in Atlanta, I was ranked probably within the top 3 in the 200 individual medley, which is butterfly, flyback breaststroke, so butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, freestyle. And I was disqualified for an illegal breaststroke touch by the only Canadian judge at the competition, if you can believe it.
Oh, no way.
And they said that my hands were not simultaneous to the touch, kind of like touch. And I would have ranked first going into finals. And it was a tough pill to swallow because I really had a chance at a medal. But what I did in this situation was I took a look at the aspects of my race that I did well in. I took a look at the 50-meter butterfly that I swam in my split for that race in the first 50 and said, that was a good split. If I went that split, I could probably do well in the 100-meter butterfly. I took a look at my freestyle at the end split, and I said, that's a good split for later on in a race. If I go that kind of split, which means time, when I say split, I mean time breaking down, I could probably do well in my 400-meter freestyle. So I got rid of the disappointment of this disqualification. I took the elements that I thought I could use for other races, and I ended up winning bronze medals in the 100-meter butterfly and the 400-meter freestyle. So it still bugs me to this day about the disqualification. I think it was unfair, but beyond that, taking a situation and taking the positives out of the situation to turn it into a negative. They say sometimes it's not what happens to you, it's what you choose to do about it that makes all the difference. So I chose to, take positives out of a negative situation, and it turned out.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, it's always kind of about the journey, about what it takes to get there. And I say that to my team too, sometimes it's not always about the end result, but about the journey and the hard work that you put in to get it there. So there are definitely things you can take out of every situation.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about, this is actually a question for me, but a little bit about sort of what happened after you decided that, you were done swimming.
You mean when I retired?
Retired, yeah.
So during that time, so a little bit of background. I met my wife at the 2007 Paralympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. It was not a competition I expected to go to, but I changed my mind at the last minute, and I got back on the team. And we got married a year and a half later, and I sort of transitioned out of swimming and into sort of like married life. And to be honest with you, I love swimming. I love competing. I love traveling. I love being with the team. I love the thrill of being able to go to the pool and give my best and be rewarded for the training that I put in. But things are changing. I was working full time. I was married at the time. But I never stopped loving my sport. I never stopped wanting to be the best I possibly could be. Make no mistake, it's difficult on many of the athletes to transition into some level of retired life, whatever that happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think I was a little bit lucky, the fact that I had my wife, and then the kids came along. But it's I don't think the athlete ever leaves you. I think that you always want to be better, and I think that a lot of the athletes that you showed already in this presentation, the common denominator for all of those athletes is just want to give back. And I think that that's sort of his, like you'll see this today, like the common denominator of success is legacy and how you give back to others. So I've kept active with the Canadian Paralympic Committee. I'm proud of my inductions, obviously the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, Swimming Canada's Hall of Fame, Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame. So it's I think as an athlete, as a high performance athlete, we have a responsibility to give back, to give advice, to lead the way, to be those, as you quote, heroes, if you will, and just make sure that people in our own backyard are in a great position to move forward.
Yeah, and that's great. And I mean, you definitely are one of those heroes that we talked about here from Nova Scotia. So we're just running a little bit out of time, but I'm going to just show everybody how they can follow you on Twitter. I know you're pretty active on Twitter. That's right?
Yeah, tweet me up. I'll respond.
So if you have any more questions for Andrew, I mean, he's active on Twitter, so you can tweet at him and he'll respond. I want to thank you again for joining us this morning from your beautiful condo in Toronto. And I know you're a busy guy and we're all working here, but I know, just like you said, giving back is really important. So we appreciate it from the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame and from all the teachers and students that tuned in today. It means a lot to us. Any last words before we kind of wrap it up?
Well, sure, yeah. So, anyways, thanks for having me. My brother still lives in Cole Harbour. My parents live just outside Halifax. I've got many friends and family. I get home when I can. I love coming back. I love the Canada Games Center and the legacy that's going on. The disabled movement is gaining steam, and there's lots of the mentality towards somebody with disability is changing. Mm-hmm. I know that Support for Sport is doing great things. The Sport Hall of Fame. Sport Nova Scotia. So there's a lot of good things going on in Nova Scotia. And once this sort of pandemic gets over and people can get out, go watch local athletes train and play. And if you're one of them, I want to hear your story. I want you to tweet me, send me a private message. If you have any words of advice that you're looking to hear, I'm happy to be that ear that you're looking for. Let's be Twitter friends. So anyways, good luck the rest of the day. Have a safe weekend and a safe summer. And thanks for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. That's great advice, guys. If you have any, that's right. We're doing some really great things right here in Nova Scotia, and it's only going to get better. And hopefully after this, we will be able to connect at a little more personal level. But in the meantime, definitely tweet out at him, and you can even reach us here at the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. If you go to our website, you can enter our contest from the booklet. You can win a really awesome mountain bike, so we encourage you to check that out. Again, we also have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well, and you can reach us out there as well. Thank you again, Andrew. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will get chatting and hopefully be able to do this again sometime.